meeting is being recorded.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Matt and Al of the Professional Storm Responders, and we're going to keep this introduction very short because we have a very important person here today we're going to interview. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, give your title with the National Weather Service, and any certifications that you would like to give us.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Hi, Al. My name is Christine Wielgos, and I am the Warning Coordination Meteorologist at the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Paducah, Kentucky.
Very good. Welcome, Christine. We would like to ask you a few questions like, how long have you been a meteorologist, and where did you go to school at?
I've been a meteorologist for 22 years, a little over 22 years now. And I received my degree in meteorology from Northern Illinois University.
Very
I believe
good.
that's the Huskies, correct?
That's correct.
I'm in the sports field for a living, so that's how I know that.
Yeah.
So where all have you worked at as a meteorologist?
Well, when I got out of college, and I worked at the Fort Wayne International Airport as a contract weather observer, where basically you take weather observations for the airport and they go into what we call a METAR. And I did that for about 9 months before I was hired on here at Paducah at the National Weather Service as an intern, and then worked my way up. I've stayed at the same office for 22 years, worked my way up from intern to general forecaster to lead forecaster, and now in management as the warning coordination meteorologist. So I was very lucky to be able to stay in the same office for at least my career so far.
So quick question, Al, so if you worked in Fort Wayne, I'm sure you've at least heard of Van Wert, Ohio, Van Wert County.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's
Yes.
where I'm from. So.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, small world.
Yeah, I loved Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne is a great place to live.
It sure is.
Yep.
The another question we have is, what are some of your current roles in NW or in at the Paducah station? What are some of the things you kind of touched a little bit on it in the last questions, but outside of being in the management side of it, what are some of the other stuff you do around the office?
Well, as a warning coordination meteorologist, the WCM, as I'll call it from now on, is basically a liaison from our office to the outside world. So I work very closely with a lot of our core partners, from emergency management to broadcast media to law enforcement, fire personnel, utilities, transportation. And so, I can visit congressmen, senators' offices and things like that. So it's basically, I'm a public liaison is the best way to put it, where I make sure that the people that use and utilize our products and services are getting what they need, and making sure they understand the full gamut of what we do here, and making sure that, if there are changes that need to be made on our level, that, we make sure that people are getting what they need and they understand. You talked about education a lot, Al, and that's basically a lot of what I go out and do. There's a lot of people out there that don't realize what we do and what's available from their federal government. And so it's my job to make sure that our information is getting out there, it's understood, and trying to make sure that everybody's got what they need to be able to make decisions. I mean, the biggest thing with a lot of these partners that we serve is making sure that they have what they need to make decisions, important decisions on their end. Very,
very good. You sound like a very busy lady.
Yeah, I am, especially after the tornado that happened in December.
Oh, yeah.
This is probably the first week, ironically, this is probably the first week where I'm not bogged down with something related to that. So that was an incredible time.
Yes, it was. We was following it as it was happening, of course, on radar and stuff, watching it as it came through. Was it Mayfield, Benton, cross LBL up towards Princeton, and I can't remember the other town's name, just northeast.
Dawson Springs.
Yep.
Dawson, yeah, Dawson Springs. Yeah, we was watching it that whole time. That was a very dangerous situation.
Absolutely.
Can you give us some of your biggest weather highlights? Obviously, you just touched on the tornado you've been involved with as a meteorologist in your personal life, while either chasing or being a forecaster.
Well, up until December 10th, I worked the Evansville Tornado. If you remember the Evansville Tornado back in 2005, it happened about 2 in the morning. and I was the warning forecaster on that particular night. And, you know, it's about the most unnerving thing to be sitting here at 2 o'clock in the morning, looking at the radar and having that sinking feeling in your gut, knowing that you have to issue a tornado warning, and you know that there's a good possibility that some people won't make it out of this, especially because it was that time of night. You know, did people have a way of knowing that the warning was issued? Did they have anywhere to go? Were they prepared? You know, we weren't expecting tornadoes that night per se. When I came in on the evening shift that day at 2 o'clock, I was briefed that we were looking at damaging wind gusts. It really didn't look like a tornado type event that we were going to receive overnight. So, you know, people went to bed not thinking tornadoes, but with weather, as you all know, things can happen that we don't expect. And so you always have to be prepared and have a way to get those warnings. And so that was, you know, I was pretty young in my career back then as a forecaster, and to have something that monumental happen was unnerving, to say the least. I remember coming back into the office after only a few hours of sleep, and I was sent back out on damage surveys, not for that particular tornado, but at the same time that tornado was going on in Evansville or south of Evansville, another tornado just as potent was happening further to the south across Crittenden County in western Kentucky. So I was sent out to do damage surveys on that. But I remember coming in, just staring at the TV, seeing all the coverage from Evansville, seeing all the people that had unfortunately lost their lives. And I remember one of the forecasters, who was a lead forecaster at the time, you know, he saw the look on my face, and something I'll always remember. And, you know, this is one of those reasons why you stay in the same place, is because you're surrounded by such amazing people that support you and love you. And he said, "Christine, I tell you to get back up on that horse again, but you never fell off, girl." You know, and so that was pretty much all I needed to snap me out of it, to say, okay, you know, it's time to do my job. It's time to get up there and document this tornado. And so after being in Crittenden County for that one day, I was sent back up to Evansville, and I spent the rest of my time up there doing aerial surveys and ground surveys and all of that. And being there with the people and seeing the damage, that was probably the most therapeutic thing, as crazy as it sounds, but sending me up there and allowing me to see what happened, allowing me to be with the people that we serve, that was the most important thing to me, to get over that. But so having gone through that, didn't make December 10th any easier by any means, but once you've gone through a catastrophic event like that, you know, it's not like it's your first time, so it's a little easier to deal with in some capacity. Nothing's ever easy when you have multiple deaths. But you know, I was pretty new in this position at that time. And so I was focused on the mission. I was focused on my job and what I had to do. You know, I had, you know, the White House calling basically through different means, wanting to know what's going on, wanting to know what the rating was. And so we were under a lot of pressure to get that track done. But in our CWA alone, it was 128 miles of damage. And that path was pretty much a mile wide for much of its life cycle. So you're talking 128 square miles of damage. And that's overwhelming. I remember the first day coming back. So that happened on a Friday night, late evening. Saturday morning, we were there first thing in the morning in Mayfield. And I turned to my boss and I said, "Where do we start? There's damage everywhere. Where do we start?" He's like, "Pick a corner, start, you know, putting points in." And I'm like, "But I don't even know what this was." The damage was so severe that you don't even know what you're looking at. We had to look at Google Earth and Google Maps to see, okay, this is a 2-story brick building, or this was a church, or this was a home, you know. So it's very time consuming. And I don't think people out there truly understand how much damage there really was, because we received a lot of negative feedback of, you know, why is this taking so long? You know, this is an F5, you know, that kind of stuff. And, you know, there's different things that go on that have to be done methodically to do this right. And so, but I probably went well beyond what you originally asked. So December 10th, obviously, and then the Evansville tornado were probably two of the most, and if you want to add a third one, the Purport tornado back in November 2013, only because that same forecaster that I told you about that commented to me about the Evansville tornado, he and I, we were like Maverick and Goose. I mean, he's my Maverick. And so, you know, anytime that we can work together and be on radar together, you know, we're like the A-team, man. So that was just a great event to work together. And we were on fire that day. So that was another good event on a more of a, forecasting side of things, more so than anything else. So.
Very good. And if you don't mind, real quick, I'll elaborate on a couple things with that. Is your discussion about the 2013 and the Evansville tornado, and as well as the I don't know what it is, the Mayfield tornado? Is that what it's referred to as?
We call it the beast. I mean, it covered so much ground. It's unfair to call it just the Mayfield tornado. I mean, because it affected many communities that were hit equally as bad as Mayfield. Dawson Springs was bad.
Yeah. But touch on that. It's not just a learning lesson or something that happened with your Paducah office. You yourself put on training, your basic storm spotter training and your elite training for the advanced side of it. And you go over in detail in your trainings on them storms. You show radar, you show damage, you show how you came up with all the information you did. So if any of our visitors that are monitoring or watching, make sure to look up Paducah's educational site for some of Christine's educational things she puts on. It's very in-depth and a lot of information. And the second part is just the recap on the Evansville and a little bit on, because it really wasn't too late. I believe it was around like 11 o'clock or so on the Beast, and as well as the Memorial Day tornadoes, which was at 10:59. The the tornadoes ain't daytime events. Them are three very large, dangerous, and destructive tornadoes that went through populated areas, and these are all nocturnal storms. So we need to make sure everybody is very aware of the importance of having one of the NOAA weather radar or NOAA weather radio stations that you keep plugged in at your house just for that emergency. At 2 o'clock in the morning, you've got a PDS, a particularly dangerous situation, or a tornado emergency heading towards your town. You want as many minutes and seconds as you can to get to your safe spot. So we really covered Matt's question really well on that one. On my question now, in your humble opinion now, what do you feel that sets Paducah apart from other NWS offices?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think anything sets us apart. We are a one weather service, and we always will be. We take care of each other. I mean, the Springfield, we had a power hit that night of December 10th. They took over and did a phenomenal job. That's you have that mutual aid there for a reason. And so, one office, can't be pegged against another because of things that they do or whatever, because each office is special in their own unique right. And like I said, we are all working together for our mission. That's the protection of life and property. So, every office is filled with extremely dedicated people who are there to serve the public and to make sure that everyone is as safe as they could possibly be. And they have the information that they need to make decisions, to alter their plans or, to be safer. The information is there. 20 years ago when I first got in, it was okay to say, well, it came without warning. Well, nowadays, with the information flow that there is with social media and the kick butt job that the broadcast media does and the storm spotters, it's what we call the weather enterprise. And so when everybody works together and with the partnerships that we have with these entities, it's a strength in numbers. It's a force multiplier. So you have the information that's being sent out, and then it's multiplied and it's continued on. And that's what saves lives, and that's what we're here to do. So whether it's us versus another office, everybody's doing the same thing with the same mission in mind.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to get into a little bit more of the weather side of things now. So understanding CAPE and its values, can you kind of touch on the difference between summer and winter CAPE values and how it's determined for the potential of severe weather?
Well, CAPE is just one value that you can look at. And I know you all took the elite classes, that we just kind of touch on the subject of different forecasting parameters that you look at. And what you have to realize is that, you know, the forecasters that are out there right now in the operations area, they come in between 7:30 and 8 o'clock, and they're spending hours and hours analyzing data. So the CAPE value is just one thing. I want to make sure that people understand that it's just one parameter. One thing you can look at that will ascertain the amount of heat and the amount of moisture that's in your atmosphere. And obviously, as you guys learned also from my spotter training classes, there's 3 main ingredients you need for thunderstorm development, right? Instability, lift, and moisture. And so CAPE value is just looking at one of those parameters. You're looking at somewhat of an instability gauge of the atmosphere. And obviously, you're only looking at CAPE, you're looking at forecast values, right? It's not really what's happening in the atmosphere. So you have to, you know, use your brain and use your experience and your schooling and your training to understand, well, what does this mean? How is it changing with time? Because obviously, the more CAPE you have, the more energy that's available in the atmosphere to produce strong thunderstorms. But just because you have a lot of CAPE doesn't mean diddly squat if there's not enough moisture or there's really nothing to kick things off. Here locally in West Kentucky, or our area at least, we've got a chance of thunderstorms tomorrow, but there's really nothing to really generate storms other than some instability. So it's just one factor in the whole scheme of things that you're looking at to be able to put out an accurate forecast. But basically, the higher the CAPE value, the more instability there is in the atmosphere. But as we learned in Evansville in November, you don't need a whole lot of CAPE. CAPE values in that particular night were about 700-800 joules per kilogram. So something like that in the middle of May, you're gonna be like, we're not gonna get anything, right? So I remember, you know, Matt, you may be too young, but back in 1990, or I think it was 1990, August of 1990, there was the Plainfield tornado in Illinois. It was an F5. You know, I was pretty young at that time, but I remember reading about it, and the CAPE values on that day were estimated to be about 8,000. So just off the charts, you know, unheard of kind of CAPE values. But you're August, you're very hot, you're very humid. Even in Northern Illinois, we get that hot and humid. I'm from that area. So it was just a recipe for disaster. And I'm obviously produced a very strong, violent, very deadly tornado. So it does have an impact on what season you're dealing with, because in the wintertime, even though you only have CAPE values of 700-800 or something like that, on site under 1,000, 500 joules to 1,000 joules, the amount of instability, the amount of wind shear in the environment can compensate for that lack of CAPE. So you don't need as much to produce that rotation of storms, to produce your supercells, to produce your tornadoes. So, you know, we've learned a lot over the last 25 years about that fact. I don't think we really realized that it didn't take much, at least in this area. You know, we're kind of the nighttime tornado capital of the world, it seems, here in South. So we've had to do a lot of research and understand what was causing these things.
Very good. And Al, I have a quick follow-up question. I do believe it was Dr. James Spann out of Birmingham. He said it was something like 56 different parameters that you guys look at when determining the potential for severe weather. So I just want to emphasize it's more than just looking at a couple of computer screens and saying, oh, there's a chance for severe weather. You know, when you have to look at 56 different things to determine the amount of potential for severe weather, that takes a lot to do. So I want to tip a hat to you guys, because, you know, that takes a lot to, you know, figure out, and more often than not, you guys get it right. So way more often than not. So tip of the cap. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. And to my team out there, you know, I've never seen a more dedicated group of people in my life. It's just, they're there, they know what their job is, and they're there to do the very best job they can. And going back to what you say, where you almost get it right, you know, if I heard it once, I've heard it a billion times. Oh, you guys get paid for being wrong. You know, it's like, yeah, but you have no idea. The person that worked that forecast, nobody takes it harder than them, that it didn't work out the way they thought, or they only got 10 inches of snow instead of 13 inches of snow, or whatever the case may be. Nobody takes it harder than the forecaster who worked on that forecast and put hours and hours and multiple days on their shifts, their string of shifts, analyzing and doing the very best job that they could. And that's really what I like to get across, is that, you know, this is not something that, people take lightly. This is their career. This is their passion. And they don't take that lightly. So when something goes wrong or something doesn't go exactly as they think, it's a big deal. And not only that, but they will go back and do what's called a post-mortem. Well, they'll go back and look and see what was it that I missed. How can we improve? Then they share it with the rest of the staff, because not everybody's working the same event all the time, right? So you got a staff of 20, 25 people out there. Not everybody's going to have an opportunity to forecast the big snowstorm or the big outbreak. So you put together things to help your fellow forecasters. And back in the Weather Service right now, within the next 5-7 years, there's going to be a lot of people retiring. So we're going to be seeing a lot of influx of young meteorologists coming into our offices. And so we've got a lot of knowledge to spread to these young folks, experience that they don't have. That goes a long way. And so, we really try to do a lot more of that now, as we got a lot of, some younger folks in here, and say, okay, well, this is what happened and this is why this happened. Learn from that.
Absolutely. Moving on now, how are some of the ways in which the National Weather Service Paducah office interacts with the public and with Skywarn?
Well, basically with Skywarn, storm spotting classes, and our advanced level class, which is called the elite spotter class. So that is one of the ways that we generate interest in the public to become storm spotters. Obviously, they are an integral part of our warning operations. And, we do things called mini courses, and I did one on radar a couple of years ago. We did those pretty often during the COVID times here, where we were hot and heavy into that. But we put on, severe weather safety courses, all kinds of different weather courses. We have, information on our website. We send information out on social media. And so we interact a lot with the public in those platforms, on those platforms. And, we have tours of the office, people come in and see. Actually, we had 2 last week. And it's amazing, to me, it's always, I don't know, kind of a warm, fuzzy feeling when they walk out and they're like, you can see they're like stunned. When I've stunned them to say, wow, I had no idea everything that you do, all the information that's coming in and going out of this office, and the radar, and just everything. They're just completely overwhelmed. And I know, Al, you felt that way too with your visit. So, there's many different ways that we can interact with the public. And again, with our spotters, we spend out, we're probably the only office in the country that I know of, at least, that sends a special email to our spotters to enlighten them on the possibilities for severe weather coming up and things like that. It's our way to keep in touch with our spotters, to make them understand how important that they are, and to give them a heads up as to when something might be happening that might influence them, that we may need them.
Rather jealous of that. I'm going to throw that out there real quick.
And along those lines, can you please explain to our viewers why being a spotter and in the Skywarn program is so important to the National Weather Service?
Oh, there's multiple reasons. And we can spend hours talking about why the spotter is important. But I'll pick out just a couple of things that are on top of my head, at least. But the radar data, people think that the radar is the end all be all, and it's not, for a number of different reasons. Again, we could talk hours about the limitations of the radar that we are all trained to know about and all of that. But, radar is not real time, no matter, especially the National Weather Service Doppler radars. And of course, we have the DoD radar here at Fort Campbell that we monitor as well. But Weather Service radars or Doppler radars are not real time. Even in, there's been a lot of improvements to the radar to where we can rescan the lowest elevation angles and things like that, which means you might get a 0.5 degree slice, every couple minutes, but that's still not real time. So that's a big thing, is that things can happen in between scans that we never will see. The larger tornadoes, the larger events, they're pretty, unless they're really far from the radar, we're going to be able to see those things. But we rely on spotters to be our eyes out there. Yes, a lot of people have webcams and things like that, but half the time, they go down, or, we rely on being able to see things, and there's not a webcam every half mile. You know what I mean? They're in strategic places that sometimes we don't even have access to those. So we can't see what you all see out there. And the biggest thing that I've come across in my couple decades of being here is that speed and accuracy. I can't stress that enough for storm spotters. So many storm spotters get frazzled when they see something that's significant, and they want to call their buddies, or they want to take pictures or whatever, where it's like, no, you need to get the information to us. We are the clearinghouse of information, so it's very important that the information gets to us as quickly as possible, so that we can get it into the hands of the people that need to make decisions and help spread the word of what's going on, no matter what it is. And accuracy, we've had a problem with that. If you guys have been watching the news, or watching the scuttlebutt that's going on social media with some of the false reports we've been getting, not our office necessarily, but that is a problem. How do you vet certain things when it's supposedly coming from a certified storm spotter? We don't have storm chasers in our area. I mean, we've got a few, very few. So we don't have that problem as much as other locations further to our west may have, unfortunately. But that gives people like you all a bad name. When you have people out there that are trying to sabotage things for God knows what reason, that screws things up, and then we lose trust, and that's not what the whole process is all about. So stay true, stick to the facts. Don't tell me what you think, don't tell me what you think might be happening. Just tell me what is happening. That's the most important thing, that you're going to be able to help us in real-time information, accurate and timely. And that's what helps us understand what's going on when we can't see. And that helps us make decisions down the line. It helps add more credence to our warnings, which in turn, again, impacts the broadcast media. On the night of December 10th, it was the reports coming in, the damage reports that were coming in, obviously what the radar was showing, but people took heed to those warnings because of the way that the broadcast media were explaining it, the tone of their voice. All of that makes an impact. And the only way that they know what's going on, they don't have time to be analyzing radar data like we do. They're trying to tell the public what's going on. So the more information we have coming in from you guys as spotters, that's where it's at.
And quickly, I will touch on what you were talking about. And unfortunately, us both being from Ohio, it kind of gives us a black mark. But there was a severe weather event in, I think it was Mississippi. And on Spotter Network, there was a person from the Cleveland area putting reports into the Spotter Network. And now they're investigating that because they said they put out a tornado emergency because of those reports. And now they're saying that it probably shouldn't have happened, but with that person giving all the false reports, they did. So just to kind of touch on what you were talking about with people sabotaging and giving bad reports like that, I just wanted to, for those who don't know in the weather community, that is what has happened recently.
Right. And, sometimes it's innocent. We had an event several years ago where people were reporting a wedge tornado, and our radar, I'm like, I can't necessarily say no, but at the same time, my partner and I were going, this just doesn't look like a wedge tornado, but they kept reporting it, other people reporting it. And long story short, we ended up putting a considerable tag on that. We did go tornado emergency, but we went one below that. You guys know your tags for tornadoes. We went with a considerable tag. And, very reluctantly, but again, we had those reports coming in. And ended up being, the LCL, lifting condensation levels, were so low. So your cloud bases were really low. So what they were seeing was a large wall cloud that, because of horizon issues and trees and all that, looked like it was on the ground. So unbeknownst to them, they were reporting correctly. It's just that there was horizon issues. There was, the low cloud base that made it look like there was this monster wedge on the ground. There really wasn't. So, that's an innocent mistake that anybody could make. Any one of us could make. It's the ones that are deliberate that are troublesome to hear.
Absolutely. And two things, that's what me and Matt is really trying to do, is put forth education on what you guys, what National Weather Service has taught us, to help spread that information, disseminate out all of the do's and don'ts, and give general public, like we talked about before, as much education as possible. But it's funny you brought up that story. Matt was just over at my house this weekend, and one of my other monitors I have, my mouse moved, took off radar, and it showed my background screen, And he was asking me, is that a tornado? And I was like, well, it was a tornado warn cell I was chasing on, but due to the horizon and the lowering of the wall cloud, it looks like a ginormous tornado on the ground. But where the hill goes up, because I was a little bit lower, it looks like it's on the ground. So obviously something like that you can't report unless you get, or you shouldn't report unless you get close enough to verify what's actually going on. And we're not saying, get up into the bear's cage, or get up in there and punch the hell core to get as close as possible, but make sure you're at a safe viewing point to get good data to report to you.
Right. And I always tell my spotters, only report what you're seeing. Don't report what you think you're seeing, or don't report what you think is happening. If you can't see the ground, then you need to tell us that. Say, I see something spinning, it may be on the ground, it may not be on the ground. And can you imagine? I mean, I always tell my spotters this, I'm like, it's easy to say this and talk about this in a classroom setting, but you put yourself out there when you've been storm spotting or storm chasing, whatever you want to call it, and you're out there and you're excited and you're seeing the storm and you're seeing the dark clouds and lightning and thunder and the wind, and it influences you. So it impacts the way you think to a great extent. And that, we talk about the set effect, the stress, excitement, and tension levels during, a storm spotting event that can influence what you see and what you don't see. So it's a very important point to make. The spotters need to stay cool. and
Absolutely.
And just, pull the reins back a little bit. Okay, what am I really looking at here? I always tell spotters, if you're not sure, call us. Say, hey, I'm in this location. This is which way I'm looking. I'm looking at that storm. What do you think's going on? This is what I'm seeing, or get in better position to be able to see what's going on at a safe distance. Okay. I see so many times, I don't follow it that closely, like where all the chasers are and all that, but some of the images you see, like a screenshot of a storm, you see all these red dots. I'm like, somebody's going to get hurt, and it's just a matter of time. And I just people are getting way too close for whatever reason, that's beyond me. But
And that's actually even true for professional storm chasers as well. Not
and
just.
we all saw what can happen when you can get too close.
Yep.
Tornadoes are not predictable in any way, shape, or form in their movement, the direction, and you need to respect that as a spotter. Spotters are not chasers. I will throw that out there. Spotters are not chasers. You can be both, but they are not one and the same.
Correct. And that's what me and Matt, we try to quote unquote chase, but we're just getting close to the storm, being a mobile spotter essentially is what it is. We're not wanting to get up. We don't have equipment to deploy instruments to measure anything, something like that. But one of the things, and real quick, off that subject real quick, one of the things that we're talking about doing is having a mobile weather station. So when we do call in, we can say, listen, right now here at the corner of Walk and Don't Walk and somewhere USA, I got barometric pressure, humidity, dew point. We can give boots on the ground weather details that close to the storm, as well as what we're seeing. What's your thoughts on that real quick?
Well, in the heat of the battle, the wind speed is probably, and the wind speed and direction is probably going to be the most beneficial. Just, being selfish, or what I would want to know if I was sitting on the radar desk, what do I want to know? I want to know your wind speed and direction. Most importantly, temperature, pressure is not as big a deal. I mean, the pressure is only going to be that much, that much different in a mesoscale environment like that, or microscale environment. Temperature, maybe, but the wind and the wind speed, wind direction, wind speed is probably very beneficial for a number of different reasons.
Very, very good. We kind of touched a little bit on this throughout the whole interview. You guys have an amazing training program down there. But what are some of the opportunities that people may find in your NWS office in regards to weather preparedness or other trainings that you may offer?
As far as to the public and to our spotters, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Together.
Well, beyond the spotter training class, and we have workshops that we put on sometimes that we invite our spotters to. And again, not many offices, and some offices do that, but we have a annual spring severe weather workshop, and we have winter weather workshops in the fall that we host. That, we share a multitude of different subjects, depending on what happened. Of course, the December 10th tornado was a big part of that with a couple of our workshops. But, we have another thing we're planning on doing. Hopefully we can get it off the ground. There's called the Kenten Workshop, where we, again, probably have it in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and it'll be just a combination of a bunch of different topics. I invite, anybody interested. There's a number of different conferences out there. I was in Des Moines a couple months back, where they had a Doppler radar conference, and there was probably 90% of the people that attended were students. But I think, anybody was pretty much invited. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, not even put on by the National Weather Service per se, but that are opportunities within the National Weather Association. Everybody that's interested in weather, the National Weather Association is a great start. American Meteorological Society, both of those conferences. I have not been to, I don't think I've ever been to an AMS conference, because it's a lot of research, whereas the NWA is more operational meteorology based, which is obviously what we're more interested in. But there's a lot of awesome presentations that are put on by people that are a million times smarter than me. It's amazing the science that is out there. It's amazing the amount of research that is still being done to this day. And I think a lot of people don't realize just how inexact a science meteorology really is, and how much we're still working on understanding how it works. And, it's 2022 and we still don't really understand how tornadoes form, that there may be multiple ways that tornadoes form, and we're still trying to understand what those methods are, and then trying to integrate that into how do we put out better warnings, so there's a stair-step approach to, being better at our jobs. And that starts with the research community, and then bringing that to the operations community in the Weather Service offices.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. Sorry about that. My next question for you is, in what ways do you think the National Weather Service has been able to keep up with technology? And I know, like, dual polarization being one example. And what are some things you would like to see implemented or improved upon in the near future?
Oh gosh, there's a lot. I mean, technology wise, that's the whole premise of one of the other management positions here at the National Weather Service office, and every office has one, is a science and operations officer. And that's their job. That's their main job, is to be scouring the research community for things that we can utilize at our office and produce training for that. There's a whole training branch within the Weather Service, that their main job at that training branch is to culminate new technology, new science, and bring it into the offices. So I always tell the students that I talk to, when I go talk to schools, I'm like, if you guys think that you're done once you graduate college and all that, you're not. We have quarterly training that we do that's required, and there's a lot of it. That's to keep up with the science. That's to keep up with the technology. And you got to keep up with the times. You got to keep up with the new stuff that's coming out, because every time I turn around, there's something new and awesome and cool that I'm like, wow, that's amazing that we can do that now, or whatever. You've got to be able to keep up with it all. And, in the government, things move slow. So when you have something you want to implement, it takes a little bit longer of a time to get through, but we eventually get there. But, as far as, what I'd like to see, I can't think of anything specific that I can pinpoint of what I'd like to see. I think our agency is going in the right direction as far as our core values and our roadmap of where the agency should be going, and that's decision support services, working with our core partners and making sure that they have the information that they need to keep people safe in a number of different ways. The underserved populations, your non-native speaking people that live in this country, people like the Amish. We're working with the Amish, with a large Amish community. And I know you guys there in Ohio do as well. How do we reach those people? In the December 10th tornado, there was I think 4 members or 5 members of a family were killed in an Amish community just southwest of Mayfield. So, we don't want that to happen. How do we reach these people? So those are our goals, is to make sure that we're trying to make sure everybody has access to the information. We started putting out our tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings on Twitter in Spanish just recently. So, we're working toward making sure that everybody has access to the information that we're sending out.
And I would like to ask a follow-up question. Following, some people in the weather community, seeing that they're doing the parachute probes, and actually saw somebody, I believe it was Reed Timmer and his group, they actually shot a rocket, like a model rocket, into a storm and gathered data. Do you think that it is some future thing? Do you think that that's beneficial? And do you think that that would be some things that National Weather Service might implement if they can get on storms?
The problem is there's just too many storms. I mean, you're going to shoot a rocket into every storm that happens. I don't know what's practical. And that's where you really got to take a look at what's practical. What are you going to gain from that information? The research community would probably take that data in a heartbeat, but as us operationally, I don't know how important it would be to see that. I mean, some parts might be, especially again, the further you are from the radar, to be able to see how things are acting and see if that rotation is a lot lower in the storm than we can see because we're overshooting it, for instance. So, but I think things like that are more beneficial for a research community to be able to analyze what's going on in the storm, understanding certain ways that there's the air currents. If you guys took my recent elite, we talked about the SVC, the streamlined vorticity current, and all the different things that these researchers are finding in modeling. And so things like that, we have instrumentation going inside the thunderstorms to be able to truly measure what's going on. But one rocket may not be enough. These storms are gigantic. There are multiple airflows going through these storms, and a rocket may only impinge on one of those. So yeah, you're helping, but it may not be enough. But again, this stage of the game, I think anything is better than nothing when it comes to data. We love data.
Absolutely. And parts of the storm cell, as it develops and it's in a mature stage, and if you do have rotation, it might be too dangerous for people to get into to deploy that, to deploy that. And I've seen other things where that can also incite a lightning strike with the condensation off of the rocket going up, smoke trail, and stuff like that. So, yeah. But moving on. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, this is static electricity. Yeah, that would be.
And moving on, starting to wrap things up here for you, because I know you're a very busy lady. What is something you would like our viewers to know about NWS and meteorology? Things like schooling, things that the younger generation needs to know, I should say, about schooling, and things that they could start studying now if their passion is weather.
That's an excellent question. Probably one of the best questions you asked this morning, Al. And that is, math and science are going to be your two biggest subjects to focus on in school. But I want to put a shout out to those of you that may be watching that are like, well, I'm awful at math and science, but I really want to be a meteorologist. I really think it's an awesome job. I think it'd be something I want to do. And I will sit here and tell you that Christine was not good at math and science either. Okay. Especially when you get into those upper level classes, you're getting into calculus and calculus-based physics and differential equations and just stuff that's downright archaic, just looks like a different language when you come down to it. But I will tell you that if you want something bad enough, you'll figure out a way, and you will come across people that will help you. You will come across good teachers, good aides, study groups. And I always tell my kids, I got 15-year-old twins at home, and I'm like, they're like, but Mom, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, you have the internet at your disposal. You can look up any lecture from any college, any syllabus, study guides. It's all on the internet. And so if you don't understand how your teacher's doing it, I didn't have that. I had one teacher that was teaching a subject. You can go online and look at a dozen or more different teachers that are teaching that exact same subject and say, oh, well, I understand how she's teaching it. Now I get it. Man, if I had the internet the way it is right now, currently, I would have aced every class.
I'm from the same school here.
Yeah. It's crazy what they blow off as to, oh, I can't do it. Oh, yeah, you can. You got to put forth the effort, but it's possible. So, you know, the young kids, these, you know, and again, as I mentioned before, if you've got kids that are in high school and, you know, going into college, maybe the Weather Service will be looking for people. There will be another, you know, back in the 90s, they modernized the Weather Service. Okay. And they closed different offices, opened different offices, changed the whole organizational structure of the Weather Service. And so a lot of those people that came in the 90s are now retiring. And so people like myself are moving up the ladder. That leaves a lot of room down below for your forecaster, your entry-level forecasters and things like that. So we will be looking for people that are hardworking, you know, that are willing to, you know, as a meteorologist, you have to work shift work. You know, I was a mother of two trying to raise kids, working midnights, working weekends, working Christmas, you know, so you've got to be ready to work those crazy hours for the mission. You know, I knew what I signed up for when I got this job. So you've got to be perseverant. You got to be passionate about what you do. You got to be passionate about customer service. You are serving the American public, and you've always got to keep that at the forefront of your mind, that you are a servant leader to our country. And that's important. And you've got to have that kind of attitude behind you, I think. But a lot of math and science, that's what I would focus on in school for our young kids. And again, expand out, you know, visit a Weather Service office, join your kind of local clubs. There's local NWA chapters. You know, there's a national NWA, National Weather Association, but then there's local chapters. Most states have local chapters you can get involved in. And, you know, go talk to your broadcast meteorologist, you know, go see what it's like on air. There's all kinds of different ways you can get into weather. You don't have to be working for the federal government as a meteorologist. You can work in broadcast media. You can work for a private forecasting company. So there's lots of different things that people can do with a degree in meteorology and not just, you know, be a forecaster for the Weather Service. So.
And a lot of viewers don't realize that if you get a hold of your broadcast media, you're able to go there while they're doing live broadcast. And I'm not sure how they're doing it now, coming out of COVID, what's available, not available now. But you can go to your local meteorologist, broadcast meteorologist, and view exactly how they work their programs, the green screen setup, and all of that.
Right. Absolutely. And, you know, if you are a student that is interested in, you know, meteorology, you know, call your National Weather Service office, say, hey, I want somebody to come out and talk to us about, you know, the career days and things like that. Most schools have career days and, you know, safety days and things like that. You know, the kids that are interested in weather, I would have loved to have somebody come out from the Weather Service or from broadcast media when I was that age, you know, and be like, wow, you know, and be able to ask them a million questions and probably annoy the crap out of them. But it would have been really cool to have that opportunity. So, you know, bug your teachers if you're interested in it. And so we need that generation of scientists to keep it moving.
So I would assume that you in the weather field, the National Weather Service, you're big proponents of the STEM program then?
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. Yep. That's why I spend a lot of time in schools to teach people. And I'm like, even if you don't want to become a meteorologist, consider the sciences, you know, and I think there are a lot of kids out there that, you know, again, don't think that they're smart enough. And I use my story because it's 110% true. I remember going into the high school counselor's office and they're like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, well, I really want to do meteorology, but I'm not smart enough. And so I put down that I wanted to be a secretary. That's what I put down. And my dad at the time was right with me. He's like, what happened to meteorology? And I told him, I said, Dad, have you looked at the classes I have to take? I will never make it. He said, yeah, you will. Put down meteorology. I'm like, okay, fine. Where am I now?
Have faith in oneself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very good. And we'd like to thank you for taking out, you know, we've mentioned it several times how busy you are. And we really do thank you for taking out of your busy schedule to sit in this interview with us, just to help disseminate information about meteorology. And like you said, to get it out to viewers, young and old. I have a 6-year-old granddaughter that when I'm sitting here looking at models or radar or whatever I'm doing, she's right here with me and she's just absorbing it all in. So going out into schools and educating is such a vital part of passing the information forward. Being a retired firefighter, I know that I spent many days in kindergarten classes, first, second, third, fourth grades, teaching fire safety, but also promoting the fire service. So hats off to you for taking out your time to go and help educate and promote your field of expertise. But in closing, would you give us a pitch to why viewers should consider becoming a meteorologist or involved with Skywarn? And is there any other things you'd like to give a shout out to or plug an upcoming training And again, we touched a lot about this throughout all of it, but just in a final thing here real quick, could you give us a good pitch?
Well, right now in April and May, this is kind of our prime severe weather season. So I usually try to clear my calendar because I know things are going to get busy, and I know I need to be needed out there to help my staff to work severe weather. So we finish all of our spotter training classes, by April, to try to make sure that we're free to do our job as putting out the warnings and watches and things like that. So as far as training is concerned, we're kind of in a lull right now, but usually in the fall, if you're interested in becoming a storm spotter, I will offer webinars, which basically is our same class that we would do on site, but we'll do it as a webinar, so you don't have to leave your house, which is obviously a great option. And again, as things settle down here, I hope to do more things like mini courses where we have little 1.5 hour little courses on different subjects, whether it's radar, whether it's safety, who knows, as the dust settles a little bit from the December 10th, I have a whole bunch of information to share about that particular event, not only with the products and services that we provided before, during, and after, but also the whole premise of damage surveys and what that was like. So I'm hoping to be able to put some training on about that, more information, more than anything else. But, as far as Skywarn spotters, the interesting thing, Al and Matt, is that I really thought that coming out of the December 10th event, that locally in our area, that we would have seen a huge influx in not only the requests from emergency management and other entities to have a class, but number two, the actual number of people that might want to become storm spotters. And that really didn't happen. And I don't know if we're still a little leery because of COVID as far as the on-site classes. They were not nearly as full as I thought they were. So maybe you guys can, as a question back to y'all, maybe reflect on that. Or have we just kind of exhausted it? Have we trained everybody that really is interested? Or what can we do to create that interest? And I know that you all are trying to do that now through this interview, and which is great. But being that you are already Skywarn spotters and chasers, what do we do to recruit? How do we recruit people, and how do we maintain that interest when there's a spell of no weather going on? How people lose interest really easily, right? So you really have to go with that angle of public service, that you are there to help protect your communities and the communities downstream of you, because the information that you provide is absolutely critical to help us do our job better and to get the word out. You think, I'm gonna tell so-and-so about this golf ball hail that's falling. Well, if it comes to us, we could tell everybody. And so we tell that to people all the time, that we're a clearinghouse. Once the information comes to us, we're able to send it out through multiple means in impacting and receiving, people receiving it are tenfold. So hopefully that's a big enough pitch for you, but we will never not need spotters. No matter how good the technology gets, you're always gonna need somebody out there verifying what we're seeing on radar. Because the radar is not the end all be all. There's so many times you see storms that are rotating like a top, big old hook, aren't producing tornadoes. Not every supercell is gonna produce a tornado. Not every storm with a hook is gonna produce a tornado. Not every storm that has rotation is gonna produce a tornado. And I think a lot of people think that that's the case. And there are more complicated beasts than that. And there are other ways, big monster supercells aren't the only way that storm tornadoes are formed, or, damaging winds are formed. So it's a complicated process, and that's where we need you all to help us understand what we're seeing.
Well, yeah, I like it. And just to give you an idea, a little bit about what we do, when we first formed this team, my wife actually works for a company that it's a workshop for people with mental and physical handicaps. And I went in there and I did just a very brief, hey, this is weather. And, I was surprised at, I believe it was 3 or 4 of the employees actually signed up. And I believe they all took the basic Skywarn training class in Wilmington. So we're right along the same lines with you. We're not just guys who spot and chase. We're also community outreach and education. So we are in the same boat as you. We want to get as many people involved with the Skywarn program as well. So it made me feel good to know that, I was able to teach some of the clients about weather, but the employees were actually so intrigued by it, they went and at least took the Skywarn class. So we're right there with you on wanting to get more people involved.
Absolutely. And kudos to you guys. I mean, we can't do it alone. That's why they have the Weather Ready Nation Ambassador Program. And I hope you guys consider becoming ambassadors, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're passing along information. You're helping to spread the word on preparedness, on safety and things like that, and becoming storm spotters. That's what it's all about. Like I said, we can't do this alone. So we rely on folks like you and groups like you to help us spread that word. And so thank you for doing that. Everything that you do when you spread things on social media and put out, retweet the watch, or, whatever your case you're doing, you are basically the embodiment of a Weather Ready Nation ambassador. I invite you to look up WRN ambassador and get on board with your local office, and they will recognize you as a Weather Ready Nation ambassador. And that's a really cool thing.
Actually, I believe we just recently spoke about this, and that's something we are looking at going and getting put onto us as well. And like before the interview when we was talking, and all of our viewers watching as well, the professional storm responders, we're going to be out at Dayton Hamvention, May 20th, 21st, and 22nd, talking about, I'm amateur radio, and I've went to 2 different organizations to talk about weather and spotting and pass on training levels, and looking at a third one over in Richmond, Indiana, about going over there and doing that. They're interested as well. But Dayton Hamvention is worldwide. There's going to be all kinds of people. There's like over 30,000 people there. So we're going to be set up over in the eComs area to we're going to have 2 presentations. We're going to have a presentation over Skywarn, the origins with Skywarn ARES, Amateur Radio Emergency Services, and Skywarn and ARES and NWS, how, where, how, why, and things to look for is that, as well as tornado history. Something we didn't tell you, one of the projects we're looking at doing a series of going back, looking at previous severe outbreaks, like the 1974 super outbreak. Where we'll be located was struck by that EF5 that went through Xenia, Ohio. Tad Fujita himself came out and toured the area to investigate, gather information, whatever, to make a determination. And then in 2000, another EF4 came through, almost identical, same path, and wiped it all out. Same plats, same neighborhoods, stores that rebuilt, got redone. So, the Xenia Fairgrounds, about every 20 years or so, gets a new fairground. So we're going to be on there talking about that, the historical part of weather in, like I said, it's going to be in the greater Dayton area, including the 74, the 2000, and 2019 Memorial Day outbreak, again, nocturnal tornado. That Matt's putting on a presentation as well. So stop over by our area. It's easy to find the eComs. We'll have all the crank up towers right there to go over. But Christine, honestly, we really like to thank you for taking out of your time to come here and help us spread the word, not only about meteorology, but being safe, how to better prepare yourself, and some knowledge points on making sure you and your family safe. So we really do thank you for coming out and doing this interview with us.
Well, I appreciate it very much, Al and Matt. But something came to mind when you were mentioning about the spotters, and I think if I would press anything to folks that you talk to in Greene County, whenever that is. I'm not sure, you didn't tell me the date, but you know, a lot of people are a little intimidated by becoming a spotter and the responsibilities of being a spotter. So, you know, I would press to them that, you know, I could take anybody that knows nothing about meteorology and make them a darn good spotter. You don't need to have any prerequisites. You don't, you know, you just have a set of eyeballs and a willingness to serve your community. That's it. And so, you know, as you talk to people at that event, I would stress to them that this is not as hard as you make it to be, or as what you think it is. Don't let that deter you from, you know, becoming a storm spotter. So I just wanted to say that as you were talking, it kind of came to me that a lot of people are apprehensive about doing something like this, and they shouldn't be.
Right, and a lot of people get, I think, the false impression off of YouTube. I'm going to be a storm spotter chaser, but I'm going to punch the hell core, and my car is going to come out looking like a golf ball, or
Right.
you know, all this other craziness that goes on. And that's so, and you might like it. I can't stand it. That movie Twister. You know, that it's nothing like that in the real world. You're out miles away from the storm, out of the danger area, and watching, because if you're underneath of a cloud, you're not going to see what's happening. You got to stay back, observe, and report data to meteorologists. If the storm starts moving your way, you got to have your exit strategies to get out. You know, what ways, what paths can I get out to get back even at a safer view? So, and we do press them point on there. You know, it's not the movies. It's not the YouTube YouTubers that's going out punching the cores. You know, storm chasing and more or less mobile storm spotting, you know, is normally very safe because you're away observing and reporting.
Exactly. So you hit the nail on the head. As long as you go through with, you know, you got people that, you know, like, I don't know if I want to do this, you know, make sure that they understand that it's not Hollywood. You
Yes.
know, that's nowhere near that. And I think that's a really good point, Al.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to wrap this up here. We have kept you busy for, looks like, almost 1 hour and 2 minutes.
Oh my goodness. No, you guys made it fun and interactive, and you guys made it easy. So I appreciate it. And I'm more than willing to give my time for something like this where, you know, you're sharing information, and that's what it's all about. So I appreciate what you all are up to. Thank
you very much, Chris. And again, we'll make sure you get a copy of the YouTube channel so you can see it. Or pass it on if you want to on your end. But for our viewers, we'd like to thank you guys for joining us today and sitting in on this interview with a meteorologist out of Paducah, Kentucky. And make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and Matt,
make sure you're ding-a-ling the little bell.
There you go. So you can get our notifications when we do have more videos like this. Some of our upcoming videos we have online is a meteorology student that we're going to be interviewing, as well as a Skywarn, amateur radio Skywarn director for Montgomery County, to talk about how amateur radio interacts with Skywarn and stuff like that. Again, thank you guys for tuning in, and hopefully hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day, because it is a beautiful weather pattern out this week. Everybody have a wonderful day. Talk at you later.
Bye-bye.